Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 56 of the Runnin the Paint podcast. I'm Miles. I'm here with Nick and Joey. Guys, how are you doing today?
Doing
What's
great,
up,
doing great.
Here to talk NBA draft. Excited.
Glad to have you back on, Nick. It's been a little while.
I know. Sorry for the absence, but we are back and better than ever.
Better than
Let's
ever.
go. I
And
can't
Nick,
hear
right.
all the draft input.
Yes, Nick is perfect time for him. That is very, very right. We have the NBA draft coming up in just a couple days tomorrow, actually, as we're releasing this. Round one of the 2024 NBA draft will be Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on ABC and ESPN from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. And this is the first year that the NBA draft is being held on 2 nights or 2 days for each round. So Wednesday is round one. Round two is going to be Thursday at 4 p.m. on ESPN, and that will be held at the ESPN Seaport District Studios in New York City. So bit of an interesting format. We've talked about it before about how, we're kind of a little 50-50 on it being 2 days. But nevertheless, it is here. It is coming up in just a couple days, and we have got a lot to talk about regarding this draft because this is one of the more stranger drafts that we've had in the last few years where we really have no clue how it's going to go as far with the order. Here is the official order of the first round, at least. You see the Hawks with 1, the Wizards 2, Rockets 3, so on and so forth. Where do you guys want to start with this? We could start from the very, very top because this is kind of been going back and forth. Who do you guys think will be the number one pick in this draft for the Atlanta Hawks?
Joey.
I'm looking at all these mock drafts, and it looks like that Risache kid out of France. I think it's him. I think that's pretty much the consensus. The most of the mock drafts have like the top 3, but we really don't know because I've also seen a lot of trade rumors possibly for the number one or a bunch of these top picks. But personally, I think it would be Risache just based off all the mock drafts I'm seeing.
Yeah, Miles, you said there was a lot of uncertainty, and we don't even know who the top guy is. And Joey, you mentioned the trade thing as well. It's definitely going to depend on the trade because the fit is so very important. I honestly think it's going to be Sarr, though, because I think he can really help the Hawks. He can allow Trae Young and DeJounte Murray to really be aggressive on-ball defenders because he is a mobile, 7'2" big man who can really clean up a lot of mess down there. And he can also stretch it out and score on all 3 levels. He can also dribble and get to the rim. I thought it was a no-brainer, a lot. But it's just been recently that I thought it was Risache. I guess it's Risache.
He is French, so that would make sense.
Risache. I think that is Zachary Risache.
Risache is so much better.
It's so much easier to Risache.
It's only been recently that I've seen him jumping up there. But I think it's between those two, and there's kind of a gap between everybody else.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's been these two, really. There's been a little talk I saw at the very beginning after the draft lottery about maybe Reed Shepherd, but I don't think so. I think it's Risache or Sarr. I would probably lean with Risache, just because that does seem like an open position sort of for the Atlanta Hawks. I think it's pretty sure that one of their, star guards, if you want to call them Trae Young and DeJounte, one of those guys will be traded this offseason, because if there was one thing we could tell from this very disappointing past season, those two do not work together in the same backcourt. The Hawks just played a lot better when one of them was out and one of them was in there really running that point guard position. I don't know a whole lot about these guys coming in. I usually do a lot of my work during summer league and after the draft to get to know all these guys. But the consensus thing I've seen from Risache is that he can do a lot of different things, but he does it off of other guys. He really can't do it. He's not really
independent scoring.
Yeah, he's not a big independent scorer. And it'd be perfect for Atlanta because, if they're thinking about trading DeAndre Hunter, and Clint Capella as well as another guy that could be traded, that leaves, room for Ricochet to fit in with, DeJounte or Trey, whoever they decide to keep. And Jalen Johnson is a nice, young core there as well. So I think that Atlanta, they really can't go wrong with either situation, because I think if you draft Sarr, you trade Clint Capella, and that opens up the center position. I know for sure, like, the Washington Wizards are hoping that it goes Ricochet 1 and Sarr 2, because the Wizards need a big. If they can get Alex Sarr at 2, it is a win for them this draft.
So where would you play Ricochet in Atlanta, the 4? Because he's a 6'9" stretch wing off ball MPJ type guy who can play the 3 really, and he's going to be taking minutes from Johnson or Kongwu or Sadiq Bey.
Well, he'd probably be the 3. I mean, I that's what I would think, because Johnson's more of a 4.
Okay.
Because it'd be a nice core to start quarters. Not completely bottom out if you trade Trey or DeJounte. You get a core of Trey or DeJounte, whoever you have at the 1, whoever you end up, having start at the 2 guard. But Ricochet, Jalen Johnson, and Okongwu as a young, front court, that's very solid for the Hawks. That's not a horrible, way to go into next season.
Yeah, they could just play both Jalen Johnson and Ricochet no matter what. Like, just have them both be forwards. Like, they can both, like, switch on both guys, because they both can be combo forwards.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at 2, I think that Alex Sarr, I think that is the dream, outcome for this Wizards team. They need a big. So I think that's who they would probably take at number 2. But when we get to 3 with Goglin's Houston Rockets, unfortunately Goglin not here with us, but a lot of speculation that could be a pick traded, just because the Rockets already have so many young guys at each position.
And there is a big gap, like we talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was gonna pose this question to you guys, because with this draft being so open as far as us not really knowing the order and certain teams needing certain positions, over under 2.5 teams end up trading their current lottery pick either to move around or to get a already established player. Nick's going under, Joey's going over. Nick, why are you saying under?
I just think, well, draft day trades are pretty rare. I mean,
yeah, they really are.
I mean, they're not super rare because they obviously happen, but they don't usually happen inside the first half hour of the draft.
The last very famous one was probably the Luka Doncic, Trae Young.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Yeah,
that's definitely the biggest one. But I'm wondering, could it be different because there's not a set order at the top? Because the previous years, that is a reason why we didn't really see many trades. Because I think that like last season, we knew the Spurs were taking Wemby. The Hornets were going to take either Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson, and down goes the list. There really wasn't a surprise until probably Bilal Coulibaly going to Indiana and then getting traded to Washington. That was really the first surprise, and that wasn't even until the 5th, 6th. Yeah. Joey,
I would say under.
Joey, you're going over on this. Why are you going over?
Yeah, I think it's mostly just because of how jumbled up it all is. I think it can be crazy. Like, a lot of these players can be good for teams. I think it's all about the right fits and how it goes. But there's a lot of teams that could be like, hey, maybe we're the right fit. And if we are, this could be like a really important piece for us going forward. Like, we always need players like this. So, like, there could be a lot of – even though it's not a great draft, this is when people tend to buy because you don't need to offer that much because they're really not superstars. They're just like good role players and possibly starters.
Now, so that all being said, with Houston really being the first team in the mix that could really trade their pick, I'd honestly be shocked if Atlanta traded their pick. Washington's not going to trade their draft pick. Do you guys think that the Rockets will make a pick at 3, or will they move this pick to get an established wing player that's been rumored, or potentially trade down?
If they had made the play-in last year, I think I'd say they could trade it, but I don't know. They still haven't made the playoffs in a couple of years, so I think they'll keep it.
I think it's always good to have good players, no matter what. If he ends up being whoever they pick, it looks like it might be that Reed Shepard. If anything, he's a good if you already had your starting lineup locked in, he's going to be. You just have him being one of your good bench players coming off the bench and do him and bring him up like that. That would be totally fine. But I personally think they could trade this. I think they might want to trade down. Maybe they like someone better that might be a better fit for off the bench or something like that. I think this pick and the Detroit Pistons at 5, I think both of those guys could possibly be big trade targets.
Ooh, interesting. The Rockets and the Pistons swapping spots, you think could potentially
maybe not swapping spots because, again, there is kind of a drop-off. I don't think the Pistons – well, who knows what they're doing. So that is actually on the table, to be fair.
5 pick, dude.
But I think they could trade their 5 pick maybe for another draft because it's clearly not happening this year because they need someone big to help that team and franchise in general. And this at the 5th pick, especially in this draft, if they see it like me, and most people probably don't, but I would look toward the future, like maybe look to next year or the next year, like just try to build up draft picks like OKC does, and eventually it's just going to hit.
Interesting. Well, speaking of having multiple draft picks, the San Antonio Spurs have picks 4 and 8 in this draft. Of course, their own 4th pick, and then they have the Raptors pick at 8. Nick, who do you think the Spurs should target here? I mean, obviously, I think that their biggest need is at the point guard position. That's been like the biggest talking point for months and months and months. Where do you think they'll go with the 4th and 8th pick?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of great point guards in this draft. One of the best ones is 6'6", and the other really good one is 6'2", and out of Kentucky, and he's a little bit too raw to be taking at 4 or 8. He's a little bit lower in the lottery, Rob. But I'm not very high in Nikola Topic. I've seen him here in a lot of the spots, or in a lot of the mocks. So like between either 4 or 8, I think the Spurs could look for him there. I don't think they'll draft him because I don't think they're stupid. I'd much rather see Buzelis play in San Antonio. Either him or Saloon.
I was just about to mention that when I could. I like that. If we were talking about, I think, a perfect pairing, I think Salon and San Antonio, especially at that 8, would be just a match made in heaven. Him and Wemby have played together. Like, I truly think that's just a perfect match for him. That first pick, though, that number 4, I like that 6'6" guy you were talking. You said that there's a 6'2" and a 6'6". That 6'6", Stephon Castle.
Yeah, Castle out of UConn.
Yeah, he's a baller and a winner.
Probably the best two-way player in the draft.
I think he's the most likely to probably end up a Spur if they do focus on that point guard position. It's hard to tell in that organization because we really haven't seen them in this position much to where they're in the lottery this much and trying to look.
Is he a point guard?
Yeah, he's listed at, is it?
Everywhere. I mean, everywhere he's listed, he is listed as a point guard. But I don't know. What would you say, Nick? I mean, you will probably know more.
Yeah, I guess he had the ball most of the time.
6'6" point guard. I am seeing he only averaged 3 assists per game in college, but that was
6'6". I don't know if he's a point. I mean, I know that Topic is a point guard at 6'6".
Yeah.
I see him.
I actually see him possibly going down to like Cleveland, down the lane, depending on what happens with our.
Well, yeah, he's got that knee injury.
It's because of the ACL.
It's the ACL, yeah.
He's gonna fall massively from where he was. I mean, he was. at the beginning of the season, he was like probably right at the top of these lists.
He was a top 10 pick, possibly.
Even higher than that, honestly. I saw him in
Yeah.
the ranking spots before, heading into the
Dang.
season. And then, of course, that's where guys can raise their stock up, whether in college or overseas. And then, of course, the knee injury certainly, doesn't help him there.
It's funny that we're talking about the Spurs, though, because I literally just got a Bleacher Report update saying that the Spurs were interested in possibly trading for that number 1 pick from the Hawks, and apparently the Hawks want both the 4 and the 8, the 2 top 10 picks this year for that number 1 pick, and it's too rich for the Spurs. I would think so as well, personally.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I would probably have to.
I wouldn't do that. That's too much.
Miles, who do you think they'll go after? Castle, you said?
Yeah, probably. I think that they would like the size at the very least, because they could use, shot creation is never a bad thing, and him being under, if we're labeling him as not that great of a playmaker now, he's going to the San Antonio Spurs with Greg Popovich, where ball movement is always, at a premium there, no matter what position you are, no matter what your play style is, like, you're going to move the ball. Like, the assist numbers may not say, Tony Parker was never a huge assist guy. None of their guys really were, but the Spurs, you always know them as a team with ball movement. You know that that's going to be, a key thing there for the Spurs. So I think they will probably go Stephon Castle at number 4, looking for a point guard. But I wouldn't be surprised if they went with Buzelis as well, because the 3 position is another thing that the Spurs could use work on. Keldon Johnson is there, and he's been, very solid the last 2 years, but he ended up becoming a bench player for them. They've been, like, the second half of the season, they had, I believe, Julian Champagnie as their full-time starting small forward over Keldon Johnson. So I think that
Johnson is a backup, I think.
He's a great backup, but he's a backup.
Yeah, so I think that Buzelis could be good. We're talking in the pre-pod lobby about how he is such an interesting case in this draft, because he's someone that, has been noted as a shooter at, a 6'10" frame to be able to shoot the ball. But this year, for the G League Ignite, he had a brutal year shooting the ball.
I just saw that. 27%?
You gotta.
That's perfect.
You gotta think these are all high pressure shots that are affecting your draft stock every time it goes up, and he's honestly got a lot of potential. No one else has his size and playmaking.
It is good that he starts with the G League Ignite, though, because he gets that type of play, because these are all guys that are pretty much almost NBA ready with the teams you're playing in the G League. Like, the G League has been fantastic. The amount of players we have seen do well in the G League, get brought up, and thrive here. Jalen Green is like one of them from the G League, and he turned out ready, scoring all the time. Like, I know Goglin has his reserves for Jalen Green, but like, he's a good player.
Yeah, you get good players out of there. I think something very impressive when looking at Matas Buzelis is that even with him shooting, horrendously from 3, 27%, this is a guy that's listed as a small forward, 6'10", giving you over 2 blocks a game and nearly a steal. If that could it's the G League, obviously, but that's really all you have to base it off of. If that could somehow translate to the NBA and he gets his 3-point shot back that, he's been advertised as being, he could end up being the best player from this draft. I know I've seen several a media outlet, I believe it was the Numbers on the Board podcast. They had Matas Buzelis on, and he was saying that, if his shot went down more this season, even if it was even at a 32% clip, not as bad as 27, if it was just normal or average, even a little below average, he would be the lock to be the number 1 pick in the draft.
That's interesting.
Maybe top 3, but I don't know if I see that much improvement.
Maybe though. I mean, just three.
He is talented,
all
no
forward.
doubt.
That's pretty impressive.
I'd be
He's one of
surprised if he
those-
slips out of the top 5 because he really shouldn't.
Yeah, he's someone who should be.
I had him at 4 on my
top
Coach Cove's People Breakdowns YouTube video. Mock draft.
Yeah, that's
Good
first.
plug. Good plug. Good plug.
Yes, definitely a good plug.
I had him at 4.
Another question for you guys that you guys kind of wanted to answer. The biggest bust from this draft, even before going into the draft, who do you guys think could end up being the biggest bust or the biggest disappointment from the draft? Kind of unfair to put on these guys this early, but if you had to name a guy.
I personally think it's Dalton Connect from Tennessee. He's a senior, so he's been experienced, but that's usually a good thing when it comes to the NBA, and usually that means they don't bust. I just don't think his game is ready for the NBA. Personally, I think a lot of his shots are pretty lucky. He's like a top-notch scorer in college, but the way I watched him shoot, I don't know. It was a lot of tough shots, and a lot of them were going down. When you're playing NBA defenses, if you're taking tough shots only in college, it means you're getting no shots in NBA, at least in my opinion. Who knows? NBA is kind of turning away from defense. He might thrive, but I think he at least has the biggest potential to not thrive because I see him as a top 10 pick guaranteed. Personally, I would pick him maybe top or bottom 10 actually, 20 to 30.
I would say I think it's gonna be Donovan Clingan because I just don't think he's gonna be able to keep up with the speed of the game and get from rim to rim quickly enough. And then, he is gonna have a defensive presence as a rim protector, and that's why I think Grizzlies are targeting to play next to Jaren Jackson. But he is not a stretch threat. He's really has to be going downhill, and I just don't think he has the handles and the ability to play with his back to the basket and put it on the deck to be effective enough at the NBA level against NBA level defenders. What happens when he's going against Bam or Jokic or AD or Tingus Pingus? I just don't. I think it's either him or Topic for me.
Really?
Interesting. Again, Topic, it'll be weird because of an ACL injury. I mean, he's already going to be working at a pretty rough stage coming off of that. But Clingan, it's an interesting note because I think he is a guy that probably out of all these rookies will most likely be the biggest candidate to end up on a team that's going to be competitive in his first year. There are so many rumors, like you said, that Memphis is going to try to pick Clingan, whether it's jump up in the draft to get him or hoping that he falls to their pick at 9. That's very interesting. I mean, last year we saw Derek Lively play, very solid as a youngster in these finals, and both were, very solid shot blockers. Different sort of bodies, though. Donovan Clingan, a much bigger guy. Bust-wise, it's kind of hard to I don't know. I think this may be a little unfair to this team and this organization, but I think it's warranted. I think that it depends on the player, but the Charlotte Hornets have a horrendous track record as far as drafting when it's outside of the top 5, or even then the top 5 is a little risky. We all remember the Michael Kidd-Gilchrist of the world. Look, the Hornets, when they aren't spoon-fed draft picks like Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, they don't end up working out that great for their team. PJ Washington was a steal of a pick. Even that was a huge question at the time, and he didn't really work out the best in Charlotte. We saw that he was so much better after he left the Hornets and after they traded him. So I think that whoever the Hornets end up taking, I think that them picking at 6 is such a bad spot for them because their draft history is just not the best, and they're going into this draft with Not really much stability right there. We really don't have much there besides Brandon Miller. We don't know what's going to happen with Miles Bridges. I'm worried about what ends up happening with the Hornets.
It's funny that you say that because on the CBS mock draft, it has Dalton Connect going 6 to the Hornets, and I'm like, well, there we go.
It's a double coin there.
Uh,
Another question for you guys about this draft. What is a player fit with a team that you want to see the most come into this draft? Because I think a big thing that gets forgotten about a lot of players, which is maybe why some become busts or it takes a little, some more years than we would hope for them to develop, is it's all about your first opportunity and about fit to get in the right situation with the right coaching staff, the right development team, and the right players. What is a player team fit that you guys want to see the most?
I think I like that Salon for the Spurs. I know I was talking about it when I was talking about the Spurs, but I was reading that he has the same agent as Victor Wembanyama. He's played with Victor Wembanyama. The Spurs organization is only doing what Victor Wembanyama wants. I think it's a match made in heaven. And for someone, I think, like him, can be quite a bit of a project, maybe, like he's not fully complete, but the Spurs organization would be perfect for that. They help mold everybody, all the good players, especially in the past, and they pretty much got the same coaching staff. But I think it's just like a perfect situation for everybody there because they need a wing. They need a wing. He's a perfect guy to fit in there. They already get their guard at 4. They got Vassell. They get Wemby. They basically have their whole starting lineup filled out.
Yeah, with Sohan potentially there as well. Now, looking at him, I think he could be a sought out player for many different teams because he looks like another guy, maybe not to the level of Risa Shea, who we think is going 1, but a very solid player as far as playing off of others. As far as moving off the ball, knows when to cut, can space the floor. Looks like be good offensive or a good catch and shoot 3-point shooter. I'm seeing some comparisons to Dorian Finney-Smith, which that'd be solid. That'd be solid in this draft. I know that Dorian Finney-Smith going 8 overall, it wouldn't be ideal in most other drafts, but this is not like most other drafts. So I think those are the type of players that you're going to be getting really in the top of this draft. Nick, how about you? What's a fit that you would want to see the most?
Dang, I just had it.
Were you going Salone too?
Oh no, I got it. I hope that Houston keeps their pick and they go with Reed Shepard. I think that'd be a good fit.
Another guard.
Yeah, just fill the guard room up. I mean, they're going to have to trade Şengün at some point because
Gavin's screaming right now.
No, I'd like to see Reed Shepard there because I think, he demonstrated at Kentucky that he can play off a creative guard, which is Jalen Green, and if they just go 2 guard there and you can play a Sar at the 3 or Amen at the 3.
Yeah, potential, and then Jabari and Şengün in there as well. I mean, they are going to be set up, the Rockets, to have so many options for versatility going forward, just because of all their young players. Whether they keep this third,
Van Vliet too.
Yeah, of course, Fred VanVleet. I mean, Reed Shepard. I mean, he doesn't have to start immediately coming in. I mean, most likely, whoever ends up going to the Rockets, if they keep the 3rd pick, they won't start immediately. That's just the way that their team is built up. I mean, the Rockets. For all that we joke about the Rockets, I mean, they're a good basketball team with a good future ahead.
I was going to say, don't tell Goglin, but low-key, they're one of the most fun teams. I love watching them. They're so much fun. They're so young. They're so talented. They got such a good future if these guys can just develop the way we all think they can.
They can make a Pacers run this year, honestly.
Facts.
Pacers run for the Rockets. That would definitely be fun and shake up some more things in the Western Conference. Last question here about the draft. Something that always ends up coming out. Players that we expect to go higher than they end up going? What player will fall the most in the top than what we expect happening? It happens every single year. I know, Nick's got opinions about, players at the top, but every year for whatever reason, usually one of them falls further. Who will that player be this season?
Well, my guy is someone that I have a very high opinion of. I think should be easily taken in the top 5, but he might fall. I've seen him even outside the top 10, which I think is way too low, but it's Cody Williams. And I honestly think that he's the third most talented basketball player in this draft behind those 2 top guys. And that he should be a top 5 pick, like I said. But for whatever reason, teams aren't sold on him, even though he plays just like his brother and he's got a 40% clip from deep in his first year in a Power 5 school and was able to score the ball pretty much at will throughout the season and played really well next to another guy, Devin Carter, who's also projected to be in the lottery.
Yeah, I think those 2 guys are pretty big candidates that could fall as well. When we look back on this draft, could be like, how in the world did Cody Williams not go in the top 3, top 5?
Right. If he goes at 8, it's too far.
Joey, how about you?
I'll be honest. I'm looking at all the mock drafts, and honestly, my pick's probably Cody Williams too. Like I see him, like I remember watching him too during March Madness and all that kind of stuff. This kid is a top 10 talent. He should be no lower than a 10, I think. But I've seen some of these as low as 20.
I don't think he'll fall too much.
If he makes it to 20, the Cavs 100% should take him.
Not gonna make it to 20. There is no.
Another guy
I'm
who I
trying
had
to
in the
manifest
lottery
it.
that probably won't be in the lottery is Eve Macy.
Oh, okay.
That kid is huge.
Big fella from Baylor. And then I guess final question before we move on to NBA news and the NBA rumor mill, because a lot of stuff has happened in the last few days. And of course with the draft coming up. Every draft, it happens every single year where there are guys that fall to like the 20s or even second round picks that end up contributing, maybe in their first year. Some end up becoming all-stars later in their career. Who could be a slept-on guy that could fall in the 20s and 30s that no one really is talking about now, that could end up being a future impact player, an all-star player? Maybe not to that level, because I know this draft isn't as great as other ones, but
I got 2.
Ooh, let's hear it.
Joey, one is yours, Terrence Shannon Jr. from Illinois.
Yep, that's exactly what I was about to talk about.
And then Carlton Carrington from Pittsburgh.
Nice.
Carrington is a really good, crafty, a little oversized point guard. Not necessarily combo, kind of plays more like Kobe White, but yeah, definitely needs to work on his decision making and shot making, but has a lot of skills and is definitely going to be a starting point guard. And then Terrence Shannon Jr., I saw a stat that compared him to like Luka Doncic as the only guys who scored like 25 and 5. I don't remember exactly what it was, but
wow.
Dude can do everything. Terrence Shannon, watching March Madness, that man was probably the most electrifying player in my opinion. Like, he was insane, besides a couple of those Duke guys. Those Duke guys they were getting really hot and they were fun to watch. But no, Terrence Shannon is insane. He can do everything too. He's athletic enough to play make the way he does, get rebounds, like you said. It was like something like where he's doing a little bit of or a lot of scoring, but he's doing other things too and doing a little bit of everything for the team. I think it's a no-brainer. Terrence Shannon is like one of those diamonds in the rough you can probably find. If he gets in the right situation where he can flourish as like an off the bench spark guy to start off, perfect.
It's crazy. I'm looking at some highlights and stuff about him now. I'm seeing comparisons of Terrence Shannon to Donovan Mitchell and Mitch Richmond at 6'7". If that's the case, how is he ranked at 20 in mock drafts?
You asked the question. We answered it.
I can't answer that for you. Man, it's insane.
That is very, very interesting. I mean, it would have to be because, I mean, it says he was a senior in college. He played all of his years of college, so he's older.
But that's the thing. They usually come in almost ready to go. Like, they can contribute. Some of these guys that have the potential and the talent, like, these teams are willing to put those 2 years in. He's already got those 2 years experience. He can come in right away and be like, your sixth, seventh man, and help you with a playoff run, gets a bunch of media, and then the next year he's sixth man of the year, gets into the starting lineup, potential all-star in a couple of years.
This is interesting. He looks like, from his his jump shot looks like Kevin Porter Jr. His release, that little thing he's got. If he's what Kevin Porter Jr. was supposed to be and doesn't get in trouble, that would be awesome for whoever is lucky enough to get him down later in the first round. Well, I'm going to hold you guys to this. Terrence Shannon Jr., future All-Star.
100%. Guarantee.
Guaranteeing it. Oh, my goodness. That
my Chuck button.
We will have a lot of things in this draft to talk about coming up in our next episode of the podcast. I guess I do have to mention this is, of course, Bronny James. We have to mention Bronny James because, for obvious reasons. It is Bronny. He's been maybe the most talked about player in this draft, even though he's not going to be taken on Wednesday. Most likely, he should not be a first-round pick. Bronny James, do you guys think that a team will draft him in the second round?
Yeah.
Most likely. I think there were, I believe there were 6 teams that he did meet with. There were limited draft workouts with Bronny James. I'm trying to find. There were
a lot of teams that he said no to. He was being very particular on who he met with. So there was a lot of teams interested, but looks like they're hovering around that 50 to 60 mark.
Yeah, so it looks like, according to ESPN, that Bronny James only did individual workouts for the Los Angeles Lakers, of course, and the Phoenix Suns. But then other teams that are reportedly interested in Bronny include the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Toronto Raptors, where Raptors president Masai Ujiri said that they could potentially take him at number 31, which would be crazy if that ended up happening at 31 without a workout.
I will always speak highly of Masai Ujiri. He's been a great GM. He makes that move, he's fired the next day. I'm telling you that right now. If he takes Bronny in the first round without even being allowed to get a workout with the kid, come on, dude.
First pick of the second round.
Oh, second round. What? 31? Still, no.
It's basically the same thing. Well, moving on, let's go to some news around the association. Because even with the draft going on, there's some stuff outside of the draft that we do have to take note of. And that was the Cleveland Cavaliers finalizing their coaching search by hiring Golden State Warriors assistant Kenny Atkinson to be their new head coach. Of course, us being Cavs fans and us wanting a new head coach for a little while now, it's been a little while since we've been trying to figure out who is eventually going to be the head coach. And now we know it is going to be Kenny Atkinson. Joey, we'll start with you. How do you feel about this hire by the Cavaliers?
For those watching YouTube, I was actively celebrating. I am very ecstatic with this pick. He is a good coach. He was a good coach in Brooklyn. He's a good assistant with Golden State, one of the top assistants in the league. He's perfect for these kind of guys, I think. Our defense is already solid. He working with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and under Steve Kerr, you're bound to learn and thrive and succeed with that kind of offense and the movement, which we desperately kind of need with these players. I think it's just a perfect fit. I think this is exactly what we needed. I think he was probably my top one that I wanted.
Nick, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, this was definitely a good hire for the Cavs. Hopefully it'll lock up the Donovan Mitchell extension that we've all been patiently waiting for.
Definitely could be possible coming out now that the Cavs are very confident that they will be able to get Mitchell to sign the extension that will reportedly be 4 years to up to $209 million, which would obviously be huge. I'm sure all Cavs fans would be running victory laps over that happening. Kenny Atkinson, the two front runners in this were Kenny Atkinson and current Pelicans assistant James Borrego. And I was personally a Borrego guy, but I was going to be happy with whoever we hired because these are two guys that have coaching experience. I broke it down to 4 reasons why I am very, very excited about this hire.
Let's go.
Four big reasons. First of all, I guess the thing that I was really excited about James Borrego that Atkinson kind of shares with this, but at a sort of a lesser level, was how Kenny Atkinson was able to use multiple guards in his offense and be successful. With the Nets, he had all-star D'Angelo Russell, Spencer Dinwiddie, who was one of the 6 Man of the Year candidates, one of the clutchest players in the league under Kenny Atkinson, averaged 18 to 20 points per game. And then Karis LeVert, who's, of course, on the Cavs roster now. In the 2018-19 season, I mean, some people forget, he was a most improved player front runner and candidate to make the All-Star game before a horrible, I believe, foot injury. It was a very gruesome injury that season that kind of hampered that. But even then, he was still solid. He was able to be successful, or Atkinson was able to be successful with the Nets, having those 3 guards in the work together. Of course, if the Cavs keep Darius Garland in the mix, which I'm thinking that they're going to keep their core 4 players. Having Garland, Mitchell, and of course LeVert from his Nets days, having that experience is going to be huge. Reason number 2 is his offensive pace, because with the Brooklyn Nets I'm going to keep pointing out that 2018-19 season because that was their best season with him there, the year that they unexpectedly made the playoffs. They were number 1 in the NBA in pace. And with J.B. Bickerstaff the last few years, the Cavs have been bottom 5 in pace, which doesn't always equate to wins, but, a change in that style is definitely going to be huge for this team. Reason number 3 is, with that Nets team, his ability to maximize that team's potential. Coming in probably the worst scenario you could come into as a coach, coming into the Brooklyn Nets in 2016.
GFF.
Real GFF, when they were the worst team in the NBA with no future assets, no future draft picks, no young talent. And he was able to get that team from where they were to the playoffs and become a marquee free agent destination in just 3 seasons. That really is incredible when you think about it.
So you're saying that if whoever takes the Brooklyn job next will be the head coach of the Cavs in 8 years?
Hey, you never know.
Because the Nets are in the exact same spot with no future assets and a mediocre team.
Hey, at least they have multiple solid players now. They really didn't at the time. They really only had like 1, which is one of those players. That's going to be something that I'm mentioning with reason number 4, and it is his player development for bigs. Because when you look at his career as an assistant coach, he's been an assistant. Well, first of all, the guys that he's been an assistant under. An assistant with the New York Knicks under Mike D'Antoni, one of the best offensive gurus in NBA history. The Atlanta Hawks under Mike Budenholzer, who was still a very good NBA head coach, had that 60-win Hawks team that preached ball movement. These previous years with the Golden State Warriors under that, dynasty offense, including a championship in 2022, and then a year in there with Ty Lue and the Clippers. So he's been under some very good, coaching staffs as an assistant, but specifically his player development for bigs, because when he was an assistant for the Hawks and head coach for the Nets, he really was the coach that started turning Al Horford and Brook Lopez into stretch bigs, or at least had them start shooting threes and be more efficient with threes. If he can do that with Evan Mobley, that completely unlocks the true potential of this team. That may be the number one thing I'm excited about with this hire.
I am so excited for how he
list.
can develop Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley could go from like how he did in the playoffs to like that on a consistent night, where he can be the second best player with Donovan Mitchell, and those two could just cook it up.
Like if he could become a guy that like he even last year, 37% just 1 attempt per game, but that's still, still a start there. 37% is a lot more solid than the previous 2 years, where he shot 25%, 21.5% from three on, the same amount of attempts per game. If he could keep that volume, but get up maybe we'll say 2.5 threes per game. We could start, small. If he could do that, that'd be huge for this team because the spacing would improve so much. And this Cavs team would just improve so much offensively. I'm really excited to see how it all works out with him.
We learned a lot under our defense, learned a lot about defense under JB, and we thank him for it. But now we need an offensive coach, and this is the man for the job.
Yep. Now we can definitely carry that over.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Do you know if we're keeping the assistants?
I doubt it. Usually you take out all the coaches in there.
No more Luke Walton.
No more Luke Walton. I will say, so some Cavs fans may be a little worried about this hiring because there was one interesting thing about this report that the Cavs were honed in on James Borrego for like the past 2 to 3 weeks. But it all flipped about, a few days ago when these coaches met with Cavs owner Dan Gilbert. And that's when Atkinson became, the front runner, which is basically, making everyone think that, okay, the owner made this hire. And that's not usually the best thing when owners make these huge basketball moves and people are like, oh my gosh, he was huge when the Cavs hired David Blatt, hired John Beilein. The John Beilein one, that was terrible. David Blatt was not terrible at the time. You got to think he was going to come into a team with Kyrie Irving, Andrew Wiggins, and even Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward was going to sign with the Cavaliers, and that was going to be a young player development team. And then, of course, LeBron comes, and things change a little bit. Now, I think that this is an experienced head coach, has been to a lot of places. He's got, a solid resume. His record may not be the best, but your record sometimes is only as good as your team is. And he was about as good as he could have been with the rosters that he was given. So it's just super exciting to see this hire be made. And I'm very excited for it.
Evan Mobley, All-Star next year. Calling it right now.
Ooh,
I can't wait. I was so down on Evan Mobley most of this year because he just has not shown he could develop. And then he played so well in the playoffs with everybody else hurt and him coming back from injury. And then we get this kind of coach. Ooh,
definitely
fun.
Now, moving on to some other news around the association. Reportedly, Raptors All-Star Scotty Barnes is going to sign the 5-year max extension to stay in Toronto. A bit of probably a no-brainer deal here for the Raptors to keep Scotty Barnes. The 2022 Rookie of the Year had a very incredible season when you look at all the numbers he put up this year.
He was great. He's the funniest player in the league. He deserves this.
Yeah, it's definitely a big signing for Toronto. keep him there.
I mean, great on both ends of the floor. I mean, we were talking. I mean, he got up to such a crazy start this year. We thought that he would be one of the front runners for the most improved player. Then he got injured the second half of the year. The Raptors decided to tank and, it tailed off a little bit. But, I mean, he is going to be – I mean, he was a great all-around player, so that he could do literally everything on the floor. So he's going to be a great building block for that Raptors team. That another, a down year for them, of course, but a solid young core with Quickly Barrett, of course, Scotty Barnes. Grady Dick had a solid second half of the season. So, I mean, another big no-brainer deal there for the Raptors to keep Scotty Barnes. Probably another no-brainer deal is the Minnesota Timberwolves extending head coach Chris Finch. Very smart deal, of course, getting back into that contention status. Got to extend your head coach after a season they had last year.
Hopefully he gets that patella surgery.
Yes.
Definitely be big there. So shout out to Chris Finch getting that extension. Very well deserved against the Timberwolves after being, another team that really one of the laughing stocks of the league for a while, just being at the bottom, having them, be really successful, making a conference finals last year, huge for the franchise. It'll be fun to see if they can keep that up heading into next year. Because that could be a thing. Teams staying stagnant. We definitely wouldn't want to see that with this Timberwolves team, or at least I know that our fellow Jackson Goglin would not want to see that at all.
No, and I don't think they will be. Not with locking up Chris Finch like this. He was a huge reason. Chris Finch and Ann Edwards. That pairing just works clearly.
Oh yes, definitely works for sure. Couple of smaller reports that came out from Woj about some options for some veterans. The Golden State Warriors are guaranteeing center Kevon Looney's $8 million team option, which I thought was very, very interesting and kind of strange that they would do this, considering that his role really diminished throughout the season from where he was at the start of the year, starting center, and really kind of fell out of their rotation a little bit once they saw what they had in Trace Jackson Davis. So then guaranteeing his contract for next year, a little strange, but I mean, we'll see what happens. Of course, this is a huge offseason for the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, he's a solid bet for the locker room.
Yeah, he's been there, done that with this team. He could teach them a little bit of the Warriors culture, at least to some up-and-coming young big men, because they definitely need to upgrade, but he's all right.
Yeah, he's definitely not horrible by any means. And then the last bit of news that came out was Denver Nuggets veteran guard Reggie Jackson accepted his $5 million player option, so he will return to the Denver Nuggets, where he was a solid backup point guard for them last season. Of course, the Nuggets said it's key for them to keep as much depth or acquire as much depth as possible, because that's really where they kind of lost their footing in the playoffs. And Reggie Jackson wasn't really that great in the playoffs, but as far as regular season, he was solid. So I mean, good for the Nuggets to keep their backup point guard there. And that's really all the news we've got today. Next episode of the Run in the Paint podcast, we will do a full recap of the 2024 NBA draft. Hopefully, we have a lot of trades. It's going to be a lot of fun these next few days, man. I'm excited.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, glad to have you back. Can't wait for the draft. The Cavs actually have a first-round pick.
The NBA never stops. We never sleep. We never ever sleep.
The NBA has turned into a 12-month-a-year league.
It really never stops. Finals go into early June. Clearly, the finals was not that great, but we have only a week off, and now it's the draft. Then
you get a trip out to the.
Then you get a couple weeks off. Summer League.
I would love to go with you guys out to Vegas.
We need to do that again. We used to do the trip to Vegas. Me and my dad go to the Summer League. Ooh,
fun. Yeah.
That would be.
Of course, free agency squeezed in there before that. This is the first year where free agent news could be reported kind of before the July 6th moratorium period, but it's weird. I'm still not completely clear on how that all works. I mean, I'm sure we'll all get a better understanding as it all goes along, but nevertheless, it's going to be a great next couple of days as we get some more news across the association, the draft. Hopefully, we get trades, some players, getting to the right spot. I mean, I'm sure it's surreal for all those guys about to enter the draft, getting to recognize their dreams. So it's just great for all their guys and for all those guys, and very, very exciting time to be an NBA fan with the draft and free agency coming up. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like, subscribe for more NBA content. We will be back on Friday to recap the draft. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will catch you in the next one.
Peace.